Hello, courageous listener. It is John and Joree back with the latest episode of Love Isn't Enough.
John, thank you so much for that really inviting introduction to our podcast.
You are most welcome.
Did you see what I did there?
I think I did.
What did I do?
You expressed appreciation.
Oh, I did. That was kind of a teaser because today is all about
Appreciation and gratitude.
yes, which is something that we have found a lot of couples actually kind of suck at.
Mm-hmm. And it's sad because it's easy, it's free, and it's super effective.
It's free.
It,
It's something all, well, a lot
well,
of things are free.
except for Joree's, I have to pay her for appreciation.
I thought you meant Joree is like you had it like as if I'm a commodity, like an item you could buy at a store. A Joree costs X amount of dollars. I know, like you got me all confuzzled. It was free.
Yeah, put a price on it. You can't put a price on it. It's priceless and free. So anyway, one of the ways I like to think about it is that we have two buckets of emotion in us. One is for negative emotions, one's for positive emotions. And most of the time we spend focused on that bucket of negative emotions where there's anger and fear and sadness and
resentment,
guilt and shame and all that shit that builds
annoyance
up over time that we tend to try and suppress and run away from and sweep it under the rug. And then it comes out as a volcano and we lose our temper and we get mad at each other and we don't know how to let it go and all that stuff. And that's part of, the equation to having a happier relationship. However, there's another side which is equally important and much easier. And that's filling up the bucket of positive emotions.
right? Well, to go back just 1 second, we have those negative emotions, we have those negative experiences. And I always like to teach my clients a little bit about how our brain works, because it's really easy to think, oh, this is just me. This is just what I do. But we have what's called a negativity bias, which means our brain is going to focus on the negative. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we overfocus on the negative by a factor of 3, 4, or 5 to 1. I mean, it's quite a bit more powerful.
Well, and it serves a purpose, right? I mean, focusing on the negative is a survival mechanism in which our brain was designed when we were cavemen. If there was a bear in the cave or 10 fish in the sea, you could go catch and feed your family. What are you going to focus on the most?
Yeah, if there's a rustle in the bushes, it pays to run away and think that it's a life-threatening.
You're going to pay attention to that. Modern day analogy of that is if you receive 1 criticism or 10 compliments, what are you likely to hold on to the most?
We hold on to the shitty statement.
Right. The criticism, because we're like, oh man, well, partly we don't have good enough self-worth to even believe the 10 compliments generally, but we don't want to feel that again. So it's important for us to pay attention to the negative as an indicator of safety, security, connection.
Well, and also I've been reading that book Belonging by Jeffrey Cohen, and I think it's just interesting that we want to belong so much. It's a basic human need. So like, the mean girls dynamic or people at school teasing you or even at work, those comments leave a mark.
Right.
And we sit on them, we stew on them, and we review them. And we're like, is that true? Am I an asshole? And those things don't really serve us.
Right. And yet, why do people keep going back to the mean girl? Well, I'd rather be connected to someone who's not being nice to me, even though that feels shitty and doesn't align with my values, my morals, my beliefs, my desires, but I'd rather not be alone.
Well, yeah, because alone from an evolutionary perspective meant death.
Right.
Like if you get kicked out of the tribe, odds are you're going to die.
Right. So this is all to say, focusing on those negative experiences, emotions is natural. It's normal. You're gonna focus on them even when you don't intend to, because it's a natural human evolutionary thing. Right.
And I like that idea that the negative emotions are loud and when you're upset, when you're really sad, when you're really anxious, but the positive emotions are fleeting and fragile. They whisper to us, they're quiet. And so we got to learn to tune our attention into them more and pay attention so that we can spot them.
Right.
One of the easiest ways is to begin doing this with each other in terms of appreciation and gratitude.
Well, and we know from the Gottmans, who are the researchers of marriage and relationships, that is kind of the ultimate within the field, who've been scientifically studying marriage and relationships for about 50 years now.
Almost.
Yeah. And it is one of their pillars of how to be a master versus disaster in relationship. And so there are a handful of different foundations that the Gottmans show in their research and in their work to support couples. And one of the main ones is building a culture of gratitude and appreciation. And we know from the couples we work with, just from our own, practices and observances of what we see day to day, people don't generally do this. And let's go through some of the reasons why we think couples don't express gratitude.
Well, wait. Okay, so let me explain. Let me share one of the examples that we have.
Okay.
From a client a long time ago, where the husband went to pick up the girls from school, and I think you asked the wife, "Did you say thank you? Did you thank your husband for doing that?"
And she was like, "Why would I thank him? That was his job." Well,
ouch.
Yeah. Just because it's his job doesn't mean you can't appreciate what he's doing for you or the girls. And by him doing that quote job allowed her to go to the gym.
Well, and think
and
about
allowed
that.
her to be at her job.
It's so demotivating. It's a balloon pop. I mean, it's so easy to just say, "Hey, honey, thanks so much for picking up the girls. I really appreciate it."
Mm-hmm.
And it's what happens is, because we are resistant to being appreciative, we demotivate the behaviors that we want to see in our partner. That motivation wanes over time. And it's really easy to correct by just expressing sincere and authentic appreciation.
Okay, I just had a tangential thought that does relate. I'm going to bring it back. But before we go back to why couples don't always do this, I just had a thought. So we know the experience of many couples in which there's disconnection in the relationship. And generally, when there's disconnection, one of the things that happens is women feel shut down from intimacy and sex.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, when there's a lack of sex or frequency of sex, the men tend to want more sex.
And they get resentful and hurt.
And they get annoyed. Well, I've seen it a handful of times in which a woman is afraid to even give her partner a hug for fear he might interpret that as an open door or a green light to sex.
Mm-hmm.
So she'd rather not even give the hug because she's not available for sex, even if she might want the hug, but doesn't want to give the wrong impression of what she is available for. So she ends up not doing it at all. I'm wondering if there's some resistance in expressing gratitude, in that if I'm really annoyed at my partner for like fundamental reasons, that if I express gratitude, I wonder if there's an impression that maybe he'll think everything else is fine by expressing this. Do you see the parallel of what I'm trying to draw? And I'm kind of curious about that, because if we fundamentally have issues and I'm thankful for all the little stuff, it might appear as if I'm happier than maybe I actually am, even if I'm just putting a small drop in that positive emotion bucket, even when there's still a lot bigger negative emotions.
Yeah. And I think,
was that clear in the parallel I was drawing?
Yeah,
okay, cool.
And so we're talking about reasons why we don't show appreciation. Right. I think
because we know it's free.
Yeah. And easy. But I think for some reason, and maybe this has to do with the negativity bias, I'm not really sure why we do this, but every couple I've ever seen seems to do this. And I think I did it in my own marriage. I don't know. But it has to do with how we look at behavior change. And how do we change our loved one's behavior? And I so often I see one partner in a couple bitching, nitpicking, nagging, complaining, poking, insulting,
shaming.
Yeah. And so we try and use the stick rather than the carrot to shape behavior of our partner. And I mean, it doesn't work.
Well, I saw that when I was 14 years old at my first job. I was a TA at my synagogue's Hebrew school with a kindergarten teacher who was really harsh with these little kids. And at 14 years old, I had the awareness to realize yelling at them is not going to motivate them. And I remember believing at 14 years old, she's trying to shame them into better behavior rather than encourage them
or
into
teach them,
into more aligned behavior than what she was seeking. And Yeah, I think it happens around us a lot.
Yeah.
If I yell at you, you'll do as I say. Really? Because if you yell at me, I'm going to think you're an asshole. And I actually don't want to do what you
Or I
say.
just get more entrenched in my behavior and I kind of bury that anger underneath the surface
Right.
and I just keep doing what I'm doing.
Right.
It shows a fundamental lack of awareness of how people change and why.
Right.
It just doesn't work to insult or shame or nag them into changing something and flip it, right? Do you like will you change a behavior? Will you lose weight because your spouse is telling you your ass looks fat in those jeans? Like, that's awful.
You might get really disordered.
That's like it I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And yet I see it all the time. We
Or,
take the positive stuff for granted
right.
and we highlight and focus on the negative stuff that our partner's doing.
Right. Or maybe it's like, the partner who comes home on time at the end of the workday, 4 days a week, and then one day is a few minutes late and then gets yelled at for the one day late and not at all acknowledged for the other times that they showed up.
That's a really good point too. I remember one of my favorite commercials when I was growing up on, watching Saturday morning cartoons was the Church of Latter-day Saints. And I remember there was a scene of a kid running home from school and he bursts through the front door and he's got his report card in his hand and he yells up the stairs, "Mom, I got all A's." And he's expecting, some praise or some love or something positive back. And the mom from the top of the stairs, you don't even see her, you just hear her voice. "Yeah, but did you mow the lawn?" And so if you think
that was for a church.
Yeah. I don't know what the point was, but it just left a mark. Obviously, I don't remember that many commercials from my childhood, but I think I felt some kinship with it because it speaks to our need to again over focus on what the person is not doing and completely ignore all the good that they are doing.
Right.
And if you want to shape someone so that whatever, they're a better communicator, they're more respectful, they want you more in bed, they want to lose weight, like you got to focus on small steps of effort and you got to work on praise and appreciation and gratitude.
Right. It's also one of those things that as couples struggle with appreciation and gratitude, they also want their kids to be polite and say please and thank you. And I've got to wonder, are they actually role modeling saying please and thank you? When my kids were growing up, we really were sticklers about please and thank you. And we kind of taught my girls to be like, "Mommy, can I have that? Hi, Mommy, can I please have that? Please, thank you." Like we kind of like overdid it because they're not going to say it twice in one sentence. But if they take one of those, then they'll get there. And I do have to say, my ex-husband was always very appreciative of me making dinner each night. And my kids from a very young age, because I got divorced when they were 7 and 9. So this was really early memories for them of imprinting into their mind. I remember my girls much later when I was divorced and it was just me, they still always thanked me for dinner. And as a kid, you don't really need to like thank your parents for dinner because it's kind of implied you're going to feed them. But my kids, by being role modeled, and then actually said to me, "Yeah, I really remember being really young and Dad always appreciating you for cooking." And I was so appreciative because we don't often consider what are we actually role modeling to each other and what are our kids picking up on?
Well, and even that example with the kids and dinner, I think a lot of times I'll see, you got a family of, I don't know, 3 kids, and 1 or 2 of the kids are complaining about what mom made for dinner. Another kid won't eat it. And so again, there's no appreciation
for the effort
there's
put
a
in.
disdain for the food that's being put in front of them.
Right.
And that's, again, it's demotivating to the person doing the cooking.
Right. At some point, well, why bother if everyone doesn't appreciate me? And I think that especially for women, and I know you're going to say men too in different ways, but I think especially for women, because so much of being a mom is doing acts of service for the family that go thankless. And, that's where women get stuck being overwhelmed and in the weeds, carrying the domestic and mental load of all the shit they do that's in their head, that ticker tape that's at the bottom of the CNN screen of the stocks going across. That's in moms' heads almost all the time. And a lot of it goes unnoticed and unappreciated. Yeah. And eventually it leads to resentment and burnout. So it's a great antidote is to recognize, wow, shit gets done around here. Thanks whoever has it happen.
Well, and what you're trying to do basically is motivate the people around you in the family around you for a marathon. This
Right.
isn't a sprint. This
Right.
isn't let's get through the day, let's get through the week. This is let's get through decades.
Well, and when we do have that gratitude and appreciation, no matter how hard the work is of what we're carrying, I'm going to feel much better doing it.
Yeah. Well, and so we're talking about reasons not we don't do it.
Right.
And one of the reasons I think we don't do it, particularly for men, is it doesn't feel natural to us. It doesn't feel normal.
Mm.
And I've run into this also with capitalization, where we get genuinely excited about our partner's good news or anyone's good news, which again doesn't feel normal at first. It feels like we're being a cheerleader, which for a lot of men, we're not socialized in the direction of positive emotions. So to go there feels a little bit odd at first. And for those of you who've had this experience, I don't care. Do it anyway.
Right.
When you first started riding a bike, that didn't feel normal either.
Right.
But you still learned to ride a bike, and eventually it felt normal. Any new skill is going to feel unusual and abnormal at first. But this is a really important one to practice and get better at, expressing genuine positive emotion for all the stuff that people around you are doing.
So let me ask you a question based on what you were just saying, the challenge that men may have given their socialization. Would expressing gratitude unconsciously perhaps make a man feel, I don't know if the word weak is the right word, or
more feminine?
No, not more feminine. Would it make them feel less capable of what they could do on their own by acknowledging what someone has done for them? Less stoic, perhaps? Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
I guess I would go with the more feminine piece, actually. I would go with the positive emotions generally to men. And I think if you're honest with yourself as a man, it feels a little bit more feminine. And so it's
kind of sweetsy and polite and
yeah, it's just not a
expressive
vibration we're at very often.
Yeah.
I think
or have been socialized or role modeled. Right.
And so I think part of this is actually about kind of redefining the goal of being a man to that of having a balance between the masculine and the feminine, so you can access all of your humanity, not just the parts of you that are in the man box.
Right.
So to give yourself permission to go there, because it really frustrates me, because if we're cutting ourselves off from the majority of positive emotions, we're also cutting ourselves off from the possibility of happiness, in my opinion.
Well, right. And we're going to feel the happier we are, the more connected we are. And appreciation is going to be one of those things that helps connect us. So other reasons why people may not express gratitude, I think one of the things that I see is people actually don't even know the language to use. They might have the feeling in their heart of it swelling and feeling gratitude in their body, but may have difficulty with accessing the right words. I find communication struggles really common among couples.
Yeah, true.
And it can feel awkward and it might feel intimate. And if you're in a more disconnected relationship, that might feel, like you said, unnatural from how we're normally communicating. Because we know that so many conversations amongst couples are really transactional. It's like being at a business meeting and you're the CEOs of your house, which, by the way, you do need those business meetings to be the CEO of your house and your family. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying we're looking for more intimate ways to talk to one another.
Well, transactional versus what?
Relational,
which
personal, not the to-do list, not what has to get done, not who's going where, not the schedule, not the chores that are still needing to be accomplished, but tuning into emotion. It's emotion, right? I mean, the transactional items are things you could put on a checklist and cross off.
Yeah, it's all logistical. It's picking up the kids at sports. It's picking up the kids at school. It's who's making dinner. But we're not, and that's necessary, but it's not sufficient. And again, love isn't enough. So we've got to have more comfort in accessing the parts of ourselves that are emotional and expressing those.
Right.
And I think it does take some practice for a lot of men, which is interesting. It's fascinating.
Well, and I think for women who have built up some resentment of feeling unappreciated, they might have a hard time extending appreciation if they're not being appreciated.
I get that. And, it takes two to create a pattern and only one to interrupt.
I love that quote. Yes.
And so, I would argue it's worth a shot, whoever you are in the relationship, play around with expressing appreciation and gratitude and see where it gets you. See if it doesn't get that relationship less stuck.
Right. Well, I think we're just listing through the reasons why it doesn't happen, right? I mean, the solution is to always keep trying. Mm-hmm. But I think if someone is never being acknowledged, they're going to have a real hard time digging into their gratitude for someone else.
Yeah, I get that.
So the other thing that I see with clients is, oh, well, I just wasn't raised that way. Well, it's just not what we did. Okay, great. How connected is the family of origin? Yeah. Right? How safe did you feel in those relationships? What was the ratio? Oh, by the way, we haven't even mentioned this. We talked about how the Gottmans have done their research, and cultivating a culture of gratitude and appreciation is at the root of feeling connected. So for years and years and years and years and years of their research, they reported a finding that was the goal of how to get out of focusing on the negative. So there's more drops in that positive emotion bucket. They said the goal is 5-1, positive to negatives. So you want to have 5 drops in your positive bucket for every 1 negative. Even that felt like a hard goal for couples to reach. However, you want to share the recent finding, John?
The most recent finding in their book, Fight Right, is that I laugh as I say this because I don't think I've ever accomplished this goal. We need a 5-1 ratio during arguments,
during conflict
to negative. So 5 positive statements or loving statements to every 1 criticism or put down. I don't know, that might be too much, and what we're looking for when we're not in argument is a 20-1 ratio of positive to negative statements.
I mean, couples thought getting to 5-1 was a hard reach, and then when we share, they're like, "Oh shit, we're doomed."
Well, and the truth is, I don't care. Like, think about the ratio or the percentage of times that you're offering positive statements compared to negative statements. I don't care where you are right now. What I care about is that you become aware of this idea,
right?
And slowly, day after day, practice it getting a little bit better.
Okay, so let's turn the conversation a little bit, because I have always been someone, correct me if I'm wrong, in this relationship who has expressed a lot of gratitude to you.
Absolutely.
And you didn't always know how to receive it.
Correct.
So there's 2 sides of this, because
compliments and appreciation are a little bit different to me. Similar, but different.
And even when I would appreciate what you were doing and did well, that I valued in the early parts of our relationship, you still couldn't always take that in.
Yeah, it's been a practice.
And receiving. It was hard because sometimes I would extend something positive and your response was a little dry. Do you remember what you used to say?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, yeah. And it didn't motivate me to want to continue to extend a compliment or express gratitude, because it felt like you weren't caring about what I was sharing. And so instead of me feeling shut down from extending that, I courageously pointed out one day, when you say thanks, it doesn't make me feel like you are able to take it in and that you actually care what I'm saying. And I brought it to your attention, which I was a little cautious in the beginning of our relationship to do that, because I don't know how that would be received. And you were able to work on that. Mm-hmm. So what was underneath that for you that made it difficult?
Well, it's fascinating to me, because I've talked about this very topic with many men over the years, and every man I've ever talked to pretty much is the same on this one. We struggle receiving compliments, and I don't know if we want to throw appreciation into the same bucket, but it's quite.
You look really handsome in that shirt.
It's quite similar,
right? I mean, if I say you look really handsome in that shirt, I don't know that that's gratitude, but it definitely is appreciation of you. So it's still that drop in that positive bucket, and that would be the thing.
For the sake of this argument, let's say that they're the same.
Okay, good.
And what happened for me is there's a bunch of reasons I couldn't take in a compliment, going way back to my childhood. And it was things like, it made me uncomfortable. It was embarrassing. I didn't like being the center of attention. I would doubt the speaker's intention. Like, oh, they don't really mean that. Oh, they're just trying to blow smoke up my ass. Oh, they just want something from me. And so there's a bunch of reasons that we resist compliments. And I think that it's one of the most important practices that we can do to understand that often, most often, people outside of yourself can see your positive strengths and attributes way more clearly than you can. And to work on, to trust that and to work on receiving the compliment well, which means being open to it, letting your guard down, putting the armor down, imagining taking that compliment into your heart. Imagine that compliment filling up your heart and spilling out of your heart, and then slowly seeping into every cell of your body. And you just have to sit with the compliment for maybe 10 or 15 seconds. But what that's doing is it's rewriting the neural pathways in your brain to begin to believe it.
Yeah.
And to begin to get better at receiving kind words. And it's an incredibly important practice.
Yeah, it's not easy to take it in. And you know, that kind of dovetails on Rick Hanson's work. Rick Hanson,
that is Rick Hanson's
right.
work. Yeah.
You know, Rick Hanson is brilliant. He combines psychology, neuroscience, and Buddhism. And my favorite book of his is called Buddha's Brain. But there's also Hardwiring Happiness, or Just One Thing. He's got a book on resilience. I mean, he's got a lot of great stuff. But it's a practice of taking in the good. And, you know, one of the things when I teach my clients about the brain, it's, you know, the negativity bias. The good news is we can rewire that. And just because our brain is going to be what Rick Hanson calls Velcro to the negative and Teflon to the positive, the mindfulness practice is having the awareness. As soon as you notice you're focusing on negative thoughts, you can be aware of it, not judge yourself for doing it, because again, we have that negativity bias, it's normal, and shift your mind's attention to what feels good. Dwell on the good in your life. And we know that wherever your energy and intention goes, it's going to grow, right? If you're focusing on the negative and ruminating on the negative, that's going to grow. If you focus on the good and ruminate on the good, that's going to grow. Which would you rather focus on?
It also makes me think of, you know, we've seen a lot of issues around self-esteem and self-worth in our clients. And I think pretty much everyone on the planet has struggled with self-worth at times. Not really sure why that's the case, maybe the negativity bias, but
well, the inner critic is really loud.
Right. And it makes me think that focusing on the good, or taking in the good, or you know, kind of practicing taking in those compliments well, is one of the ways to increase your self-esteem and your self-worth, along with, you know, I love, you know, kind of training yourself to think the loving kindness thoughts of,
right,
may I feel worthy, may I feel worthy of love, may I feel worthy of success, may I feel worthy of happiness. That kind of practice, I think, is also quite effective.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that go with this compassion practice, right? We often can have greater compassion for others than we do for ourselves. It's because that damn inner critic talks to ourselves in our own mind like we wouldn't even talk to someone else we don't like. I mean, talk about a mean girl. That inner critic, you know, is pretty much an asshole. And yet it tries to shame us into better behavior. So just like we were saying we wouldn't do with our partner, we could extend that same practice to ourselves and just notice, man, how many negative things am I saying about myself today?
So let's go back to appreciation and gratitude and just talk about how to increase appreciation and gratitude and what that looks like and sounds like. Because I think most people will mistakenly think that it's about the really big things. And I don't think it's that at all. It can be.
No.
But the best stuff is the little tiny things.
Well, how about this? If marriage is death by 1,000 paper cuts, it's saying that it's the small things that add up over time that create the bigger problems. So we could reverse that, and we can say connection is through the small things.
That's the points of connection,
right? It's and the Gottmans, you know, call it small things often. So I think it's a great thing to role model that. So let's talk about how some of the ways that we express gratitude.
So I like thinking of it as a game, and a game in which you're trying to catch your partner doing good. And you can extend this to the kids in the family. You can extend it to coworkers, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with it. But for now, let's just stick with the partner. And I think it's this idea of what changes do you notice, or what's the smallest things you notice your partner doing that you can be grateful for? And it can be things like emptying the dishwasher, doing the dirty dishes, taking out the garbage, feeding the dog, changing the bed, picking up the kids from school, taking the kids to school, working hard at work. It can going to the gym. I mean, I I'm a big fan of complimenting effort, because a lot of times we don't control the outcome, or we don't control the outcome completely. Like if I go to the gym 5 days a week, I can control that effort. I can't really control how that shows up in my body.
Right. I mean, you brought that up earlier on about thanking someone for going to the gym. And I want to be clear here. When you and I say that to each other, it's not like we're trying to get each other to look a certain way. When you and I compliment each other for going to the gym, it's basically thank you for taking care of yourself, because your health matters to me. And I appreciate the effort you're putting into your self-care.
Yeah. And you look better and feel better when you do work out.
Right. So I just want to be clear, like we're not trying to like shame each other into a certain body type. And I just don't want that to come across that way. It really is valuing the effort in self-care. And, you know, you often say to me too, you're 10 years older. It's like, I want to be healthy for you. I want to live a long life for you. So I'm going to validate the hell out of your effort there.
Yeah.
I love when you take care of yourself, just like we've talked about on the podcast. I love when you rest. Like that is self-care. I'm so glad that you did that for yourself today. It's not my problem. I got an hour to myself to do what I needed to do. Great. But I like to catch you in gratitude for things that I know you did. And I want to be aware that I saw that you did, even though you might not want to name that you did.
Well, that was a game that I would play for a while.
I love that game. That's oh, well, it's a fun game for me because of course I notice everything. But like, I remember a couple years back, I think it was actually during.
Oh, and by the way, if you don't notice, I don't get butthurt about it.
Right.
It's just kind of an anonymous good deed.
Right. Right.
That's important, I think.
But I remember there was one day during COVID, and, you know, during COVID, both of our client loads increased quite a bit. And there was just obviously very stressful times. And there was one particular stressful day, and I noticed that you had filled the protein powder from the big container in the garage to the smaller container on the counter. And I think also had like filled up the dog food. And it was these seemingly small chores that for me was like, oh my God, you did that. Thank you. Like that was such a huge help. And I so appreciated, because that was so loving. That was a loving act. Right.
Absolutely. So, and I think, you know, to dovetail on that, I think there's tone of voice is a big part of this.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how good some of us are with tone of voice, but, you know, to consider the difference between thanks, hon, versus, wow, thank you so much, honey. I really appreciate you making dinner tonight. It was fantastic. Like it's got to be heartfelt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we've recently moved in together, and I know that you are working hard in the areas of being partners, and I'm working hard in making sure that, you know, I'm meeting your needs, you're meeting mine. And every time I see something that I value, I want to let you know, hey, I really value that, because I want that to continue. I don't. And if it starts sloughing off and not being noticed, it's hard to stay as motivated. And it also feels like you see me, that I'm seen and my needs are being understood, and we are turning towards, because that's another part of the Gottman's work, is turning towards. And so, you know, all of these things that we can be doing for one another is an effort towards the relationship. And it's so easy to not do any of it. How many times do you think we say thank you to each other in some capacity a day? Honestly.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this earlier during the show. We are ridiculously polite to each other. Saying thank you and please and excuse me and you're welcome. And at the same time, we are smartasses and we can
banter,
call each other names and be playful. And so it's this odd kind of mix. But I mean, in terms of your question, I dozen times a day.
I think at least, honestly.
I was going to say dozens, but I think that's too much. I would say, 10 to 20 times a day.
Yeah. And I have to say, you are very good
Thank you.
at acknowledging. See, look at that. You're welcome. You're very, very good at acknowledging the things that I do that I would do even if you didn't live here. And that's the key too. It's not just what we're doing for each other. It's any acknowledgement.
But it's about motivation.
Right. Well, I think it's not just motivation. I mean, there's some things that you can acknowledge me doing that I would do even if you didn't care. So I'm still going to do them no matter what. On some of those, like, thanks for making the bed today. Because you say that to me almost every day.
Yeah.
And I make the bed whether you're here or not. I do it for me and for no one else. And after you nap, I go back and I fix it up.
You don't do it for me?
No, I do it for me. I do it for us,
Aw.
baby. However, your appreciation of it makes me feel acknowledged.
Yeah.
It's not about motivation on that part. It's really about acknowledgement, and you see what I'm doing.
Well, I think if you want to help the other person to continue doing the positive behaviors that they're doing, it's helpful in terms of motivation. Right. It's helpful in terms of the drops of positive emotion
right.
into that bucket.
Well, see, on that one,
validation.
Well, on that one, I would see that more as a drop in the positive bucket than motivation. Because again, I'm going to make the bed whether you thank me or not, or whether you're here or not. Mm-hmm. That's really what I'm doing that for myself. But to me, it's more on that one, a drop in the positive bucket. Because with enough drops in the positive bucket, if you snipe at me for something, or you're feeling irritable or whatever, I'm going to have less of a sting with it because there was so much more positivity left over.
And that's a key point. That, you know, I like the idea of the other way to look at it from a bucket is as a bank account.
Right.
Is that you're putting deposits in the bank account so that when things get difficult, or when, you know, you're exhausted and you say something untoward, you have something to withdraw from.
And I think that's the 5-to-1 ratio that right. they were looking for, which is now the 20-to-1. Now, okay, we can get clear on the day-to-day stuff, saying thank you for the things that you're not even doing for the other person that are just your job. How would it sound? So for our listener, how would it sound to be expressing gratitude or appreciation during conflict?
I think you can do it in terms of, you know, I get your point. Thank you for sharing that.
Right.
I think you can also compliment what they're not doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, thank you for not name calling. Thank you for
keeping your tone of voice. Yeah. Thank you for not yelling.
Thank you for remaining open to what I'm saying. That sort of thing.
Yeah. I really appreciate we got through this hard conversation. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That would be a way to do it.
Yeah. Thank you for having this hard conversation with me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think part of the challenge there, and I think we just gave some great examples in that. So thanks for role playing that with me. I think part of it, again, is people just don't know the language to use. What would that even sound like? Well, we got no costumes on or anything.
I'm missing my costume. And
but
missing your French maid's outfit.
Yeah, well, that's for another show, baby.
Okay.
And now I've lost my train of thought. I'm like, okay, what would we talk about costumes? We don't actually do role play with costumes. So we don't really have much to say there. That's okay. Yeah. I think you're sexy enough as you are. You don't need to dress up. You're welcome. So, but in conflict, you know, naming, yeah, I'm grateful we're getting through this. Mm-hmm. This is really hard. Thanks for sticking with me. Thank you for not being an asshole right now. Well, now that's kind of a double negative.
But
I won't.
The other part is, you know, going back to the idea which we've talked about in the past, this kind of virtuous spiral of revisiting difficult conversations, where each time you revisit conversation, you get more distance, more objectivity, more curiosity, and greater clarity about what the triggers were, why you behaved like you did, why did you say what you did? Is this about us? Is it about past relationship or your childhood? I think that you can have compliments in there about, you know, thank you for revisiting this conversation with
mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I know this was painful for you, and thank you for being brave enough to go there.
Yeah. And I also know, because we went through a period where it was really hard to find the gratitude and the appreciation, you know, kind of during the hardest few months before our breakup. And especially you were stuck in a negative lens, and it was hard to.
Yeah, my gratitude teat was dry.
Oh, your poor little gratitude teat. Has that gratitude teat gotten more moist? Oh, John.
Oh, thinking about milking a cat.
Too far, baby. I haven't said that to you in so long, but I guess if you're watching the video, you just saw him role model that, or like role play his own little cat teat milking. I don't even know if that's a phrase, but that was awkward. Don't do it again. Don't. I'm sorry for those who are watching and not just listening. Once again, you've made me lose my train
I know
of
that was
thought.
the goal.
My point
What
is,
is your point?
when you're in a depressed mood, not you personally, but when you were in a depressed mood, it can be really, really hard to access gratitude. And I think I want to name for that sometimes people are stuck in seasons of their life in which this might feel harder than others. So you could even do like a halfway bit of saying, look, I'm really trying hard to find the good here, and I'm struggling, and just know that I'm trying. Because I think even that could be received really well.
Well, then again, I mean,
it's
if you
effort.
were saying that, I'm going back to effort, right? Thank you for trying. Thank you for your effort. I appreciate it. Right. I know it's hard.
Yeah. So I want to wrap this up by talking about a couple things specifically. One, November is National Gratitude Month. And I don't know if you know, well, I know you know, John.
You have a book on gratitude.
I do have a book on gratitude. It actually came out a couple of years ago called A Year of Gratitude. And
it's a great gift for the holidays.
It is a great gift for the holidays. Thank you for that little plug. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on my website, joreerose.com. But it is like a calendar style book. And there are literally 365 different ways to practice gratitude. I mean, you guys should have seen my dining room table of Post-it notes when I was coming up with that, because it's hard to think of more than one way to be grateful and more than one way to express it. So if you feel stuck on not knowing how to express gratitude, get my book and open a random page or open that day and let it be a partner practice that you can do. I just kind of shut him down on talking for a second. I put up the finger. Okay, hold on. I'm still talking. Because I have one more thing to say about that. Okay. Will you remember your thought?
I got it.
Okay, cool. But one of the things that is helpful is, I mean, the most basic form of gratitude practice, if anyone's doing like a gratitude journal, I mean, you guys can do this together as partners or journal on it and then share later. But you often typically hear like, okay, write down 3 things you're grateful for. Okay, that's lovely. And that's going to still help get out of that negativity bias. But one of the things that was my favorite in the book is think about 1 thing you're grateful for and 5 reasons why. I love going deeper with it and getting clear of, why am I grateful for this? What is it about that makes me feel so good? So the book is a great way to expand your gratitude awareness and kind of library of ideas, but use it together. Do it as a family. Okay, John, I hand the conch shell to you. But yes, great. Yeah, all good stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. One of the things I was thinking, that one of the favorite ways, I guess, that I have to express gratitude is with Post-it notes on the bathroom mirror. And I've done this for you in the past.
And for your daughter.
I've done it for Molly. The Post-its for my daughter Molly stayed up on her bathroom mirror for over a year, I think. And then they gradually like withered to dust and fell down. Aww. But it was things like, I love you, you're courageous, you're beautiful, you're connected to everything. Like, just, kind of,
I appreciate you. Yeah.
Affirming and grateful.
Yeah.
And those mean a lot. And before she left for college, she left Post-it notes on my bathroom mirror.
She did.
And, if you really want to take it to the next level, leave some random Post-it notes on the mirror in the bathroom at work. To random people.
I once was at a restaurant that had that, where
Ally McBeal style, perhaps.
Yeah, I was at a restaurant and I forget where I was, but the whole bathroom wall was covered in Post-its, and there was like a Post-it pad and a pen in the wall.
That's cool.
I used to have that same idea in classrooms when I taught mindfulness in the classrooms. Is we would do that and have like a gratitude poster and do it the month of November in preparation for Thanksgiving, and kids loved it. Teachers loved it. They would keep it up all year long. And that kind of brings me to the next point of, it's really easy to focus on gratitude and thanks during Thanksgiving. And of course, I love the tradition of going around the table and saying what you're grateful for. I think it's a great thing. But I have, in years past on my individual podcast, titled episodes Thanks Living. Like, it's not just something we do once this time of year that everyone's focusing on gratitude and we're extending kindness and well wishes. Like, what if we actually embrace that as a daily habit?
It's a daily practice.
And how much better would we feel? Because there is enough fucking shit going on in the world. And that's really how I feel about that right now. That we need now more than ever, I would argue, to look for the good.
Well, we need to find ways to connect with other people, regardless of their political belief or their color or their
background or their
geography,
differences or economic status or
religion.
whatever.
We got to connect. We're humans.
We got to look for the good, you guys.
The in group is humans.
We are all on the same team here. It's imperative that we, I mean, I can't state this enough. And I understand it might not feel natural. It might not feel normal. It might feel contrived at first. Let that be okay. Even if you're for the first time learning to express gratitude to your partner, you can be honest and vulnerable and say, you know what, this feels kind of weird. I'm thanking you for going to work today. That feels awkward.
Or tell them that you're practicing gratitude.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, name it. Yeah. Like, I'm working on this. This feels awkward. This feels weird.
It feels funny.
Yeah. And I also like it. Sometimes we'll lie in bed at night and we'll kind of organically go back and forth, thanking each other for what we did. It's a great way to fall asleep at night. It's a great way to feel connected. If you want to make love, start with gratitude for your partner. Then there's one more thing.
The gratitude massage.
The gratitude massage.
One of our favorites.
John, want to tell about the gratitude massage?
Sure. It's basically, so my favorite version of it is you strip down naked and then one of you lies face down and the other one gets on top and starts giving a massage for about 10 minutes while expressing verbally all the things you're grateful for about that person. And then they flip over and you give them a massage on the front side for about 10 minutes and continuing to express everything you can think of that you're grateful for, who they are, what they do, how they look, and how they
their character.
And then you switch and you see how far you can go before you can't go anymore.
Well, he's saying, right. It's hard to last 40 minutes, which, I mean, for me personally.
You always seem to get through your massage, though.
Of me receiving a massage or getting a massage?
Receiving a massage. Well, they're the same thing, receiving and getting.
Oh, I meant giving.
That's a Freudian slip. Give me my massage. I
really like getting massage. Like for me personally, the gratitude massage are my two main love languages wrapped into one.
It's
every single
acts of service. It's words of affirmation. It's physical touch.
It's quality time, and it's gifts. Because all I ever want is a massage. Like,
so it's at least 4 out of 5.
At least, yeah. It is a beautiful practice. And if that is not something, what?
There's a Meatloaf song about that. Like 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Sorry, that was a tangent. 4 out of 5 ain't bad.
He says I interrupt and have squirrels, but you know what, you guys? He does just as much. It's actually hilarious. That wasn't funny.
You know, so, it's about amusing yourself.
Okay, are you happy?
I'm amused.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I continue?
You can.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
thanks. Bye. Okay, not bye.
No,
my turn. Okay.
Now,
so, doing a gratitude massage might feel way too far on the vulnerability scale and intimacy scale if you are disconnected. So how about maybe a 2-minute gratitude foot massage? But I think the key there. Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, your feet are always naked unless, well, yeah. I meant like an actual just like foot massage on the couch while watching TV.
Or the bath. Well, that would be too much.
Well, if you're naked on the couch, you might need a black light before the kids can come sit down on the couch later. Or they might come in and that'd be really embarrassing. Yeah. Once again, I feel derailed from my thought that I was going to have. So my point is, if that feels too vulnerable to do that, start with something really small, a shoulder massage, a foot massage, clothes on, 2 minutes, 1 minute, say 5 things kind about each other. I mean, you can build up to that 40-minute massage. That's ideal. Well, at least for us, that's ideal because that's, we like giving and receiving touch. Not everyone is into that. Yeah. But pairing the touch with the affirmation and the kind words, it's really a beautiful practice of taking in the good.
And that's all the time we have for today because I have to go talk to a client. And also wanted to remind you all that we're coming to the end of our year-long masterclass on how to create an outstanding relationship. And we will be doing it again come January. And it's every month, 1 class a month. You get homework. Those classes are about an hour to an hour and a half long. And there are 12 topics that we feel you must have in order to create a happier, thriving relationship. So if you're interested in something like that, it's ridiculously cheap and it's available, or you can find out more at loveisn'tenough.net.
And John, I am so appreciative of doing this podcast with you.
I love doing this podcast with you.
I'm so appreciative for our listeners for tuning in to this
I
podcast.
am so appreciative of the listeners too. And to those that share it and really seem to like it, enjoy it, and get a lot out of it. We've heard from people that are listening to it several times.
Yeah, we're getting really great feedback. And ultimately, I'm just really expressing gratitude for our relationship and the growth that we have both done, because I couldn't be happier. And I know how much gratitude plays a part in our day-to-day life. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Happy being grateful. Enjoy.